But today our scripture text is going to be coming from 2nd Chronicles 10, verse 15 out of the Amplified Version. And it reads, "So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from God, that the Lord might fulfill his word, which he had spoken through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat." Again, so the king, 2nd Chronicles 10:15 out of the Amplified Version. So the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from God, that the Lord might fulfill his word, which he had spoken through Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And if I could use for a subject message on today, I would like to use, it's gonna add up. It's gonna add up. It's going to add up. And most of you know that we are from the country, so we don't say going to, we say it's gonna. It's gonna add up. It's going to add up. And there are times that God gives us a word, and the things that happen in the process makes it look the very opposite of what God has said. Can anybody relate to that? God has said something, but then there's a course of events that start taking place that looks the very opposite of what God has said. It does not look like what God has said. It does not look like what God has promised. But yet, and in that process, let me just add, sometimes in that process, we get discouraged, we get frustrated, we get disappointed in the process because it does not look like what God has said. And in fact, again, it looks the very opposite of what God has said. But yet, God makes it produce what he said it will be. That was our intro to what the message is going to be. There are times when God gives a word, and the things that happen in the process, it looks the very opposite of what he said. But yet God will make all of those things produce exactly what he has said. I just need for somebody to type it over in the chat box. It's going to produce it anyway. It's going to produce it anyway. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it feels like. It's going to produce it anyway. Come on here. It's going to produce it anyway. And Solomon is known for praying for wisdom and not stuff. We hear a lot of messages, and we've heard a lot of messages about Solomon and how he has prayed for wisdom. He could have asked for anything that there was. And he had that ability, he had that option, he had that privilege in front of him to ask God for anything. But instead of him asking for a house, instead of him asking for a car, instead of him asking for a boo, instead of him asking for anything, he asked for wisdom. He didn't ask for a better house, he didn't ask for a better car, he didn't ask for better horses, he didn't ask for any of those things. He asked for wisdom. And he's known for that. But yet Solomon, as he began to continue in his reigning and continue in his kingship, Solomon got seduced by women who he was forbidden to marry. We don't hear a lot about this, but he did. He got seduced by women that he was forbidden not to marry. He was not forbidden to marry them because they were not good enough. But he was forbidden to marry them because they had strong beliefs that would prove to be the beginning of Solomon's downfall. They worshiped other gods. They did not worship the true and living God. And that is why Solomon was forbidden to marry them. But yet Solomon got seduced by them, and Solomon engaged, and Solomon built relationships with them. And as a matter of fact, Solomon, if I'm not mistaken, Solomon had 700 wives. I know some of the men are just like wiping their forehead like, oh my God, especially my husband. I do good to deal with the one I got. Don't give me 699 more, because they can be a trip sometimes. Come on, ladies. We can be really tough sometimes to deal with. And nevertheless, Solomon had 700 wives and he had 300 concubines. So a total, he had 700 women. I'm sorry, 1,000 women. 1,000. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, which made the number total out to 1,000 women that he had to entertain, that all had different beliefs and they served different gods. So we can begin to see where some of Solomon's challenges came in at. And it would prove to be the beginning of Solomon's downfall. And through these relationships, Solomon would begin to be introduced to worshiping their gods and not his God that gave him everything that he had. And the question now becomes is, can God trust you? I want to ask you the question, can God trust you to stay when you have it? Just like you stayed before you got it. Come on, did somebody just catch that? Can God trust you to stay when you have it? Just like you stayed in his presence before you got it. Because sometimes we pursue God and we're in the face of God and we're seeking God until we get it. And the moment that we get it, we go off and we do other things that will not bring him glory. We go off and we do other things that will not bring him honor. And the question again becomes, can God trust you? Can God trust you to stay even when he gives it to you? I just want you to ask yourself that question, because I believe we all got some things that we've been praying and we've been asking and we've been believing God for. But now just ask yourself the question, can God trust me to stay even when he gives it to me? Can he trust me to stay? And Jeroboam is one of Solomon's, he is one of Solomon's supportive employees and supporters. Solomon has begun his practice of other religions and serving other gods, and it became a problem to Jeroboam, who was Solomon's servant. He worked for Solomon in his kingship. And when he saw that Solomon had begun to do things that were not lining up with what God had purposed, it became a problem for Jeroboam. And you can find that in 2 Kings 11 verses 26 through 40. And I'm not, for the sake of time, I am not going to read that, but Aretta is going to type that over in the chat box so you can go back and you can reference to that. You will find that in 2 Kings 11 verses 26 through 40. It became a problem to him. And I need for you to understand that Jeroboam, he had status with Solomon. He worked for Solomon. And Solomon just did not give, he didn't get benefits of the kingdom, but Solomon also gave him authority. He had authority with the people. So he had a position and he had status. But Jeroboam, one day while he was out in the field, he gets this word from God through a prophet. And God tells him that there are the 12 tribes of Israel. And he said, out of the 12 tribes, I am going to give you 10 of them. I want somebody to catch that. God tells Jeroboam, he said, I'm going to give you 10. I'm going to put you in charge of 10 of the tribes out of 12. So he's basically telling him, I'm going to give you the majority. I'm going to give you the majority of it. And after he gets this word from God through the prophet, he has to flee. I want somebody to understand what's going on, because Jeroboam gets this word. He gets this word from God. But then right after he gets this word from God, he now has to flee and go into isolation. Can you just imagine? I got this word from God, but now it's not, I'm having to flee. I'm having to run. And can you imagine what's going through his mind? It's not looking like what God has promised. Can anybody relate to that? I got a word. Pastor Fran has been coming with a word Sunday after Sunday, and she's been telling me that God is going to do this, and God says he's going to do that, and this is going to happen, and that is going to happen. And sometimes right after I get that word on Sunday, I feel like I'm having to run into isolation because something has happened and it's causing it not to look like what God said it's going to be. Can anybody relate to that? Just type it over in the chat section. I see you, woman of God, with your hand up, and we keep getting these words, and I feel like I'm having to run. I'm having to get out of the very presence of people that are holding what I'm believing God for. And after he gets this word, he has to flee, and he's fleeing from the man that has it. The man that has it is now after his life. A man that he once supported, that he is no longer in a relationship with. He has to flee from this man. I want to stop right there and put a pin in that and tell you some of the relationships that you've had to let go of. It's not because you didn't love the person. It was not because you didn't support the person. It was not because they were not fine, desirable, and or fun to be around. Some of the relationships that we've had to let go of, it was simply because the relationship did not, or it no longer supported the relationship that I desired to have with God. Can anybody relate to that? There are some relationships that I had to let go of, not because the person was not fun, not because they wasn't fine, because you know some of the people that you had to let go of, they was fine. Come on here, let's just be truthful about it. They was fine and you wanted to be with them, but you said, because I value my relationship with God over all of that, I had to let this go. Come on, can anybody? I had to let it go. They were fun to hang around at one point, and they made me feel good at one point. But when I really looked at the fact that I valued my relationship with God over the fun, I valued my relationship with God over their fineness, over their cuteness, over their adorableness, over the benefits. Because watch this, some of us left relationships that were temporarily beneficial to us. It was a conflict. It was a conflict to keep the relationship. And one of the things that God told me to tell you was, he said, stop beating yourself up. Stop letting the enemy make you think that you missed out on something because you let the relationship go. Because God is sending the word today. It's going to add up. He going to make it add up. Somebody just type that over in the chat section. God going to make it add up. I had to let the relationship go, but God going to make it add up. He gonna make it add up. I had to walk away from some things. I had to walk away from some people, but God is gonna make it add up. He gonna make it add up. And one of the things that you must do in the process of that is your why has to be more important than your feelings. Come on here. Why you let it go has to overrule the cravings that you have to be with the person, especially when you know it's not of God. Your why has to dominate what you feel. Come on. Your why has to dominate what it looks like. Sometimes you're going to even have to remind yourself of why you did what you did, because the way it looks is going to make it look another way. But you're going to have to remind yourself of why you did what you did. This is why you got to know why you do what you do. I know it was a financial benefit for me to keep the person, and it made things a lot less stressful on some ends. But I let them go because I valued my relationship with God. I know they was cool to be around, but I valued my relationship with God. I know they was fun and I know they made me laugh, but it was in conflict of the relationship that I really wanted with God. Can anybody relate to that? That's why I let some of the relationships go, is because I valued my relationship with God over everything else, because I just knew God was going to make it add up. He was going to make it add up. And our text now picks up with Solomon's son, Rehoboam, who is now taking the throne after his father. And the people led by Jeroboam is now, after Solomon's death, Jeroboam has now come out of isolation, and he is now went with the people, and he is approaching Rehoboam, which is Solomon's son, and he's telling him, he said, look, your dad was really hard on the people. It wasn't that he was necessarily a bad man, but he was really hard on the people. He taxed them very heavily, and he made them work really, really hard. And the people, all they're asking for is if you will just let up off of some of the pressure that your dad has put on us. If you will just ease up some of the pressure that your dad put on us. And if you will ease up the pressure, we will serve you. We will do the things that you want us to do if you will just ease up some of the pressure. And so when they went to him with the petition and the request, he sought counsel. But it's one thing to seek counsel, and it's another thing to advice shop. There's a difference between seeking counsel and advice shopping. The difference is between seeking counsel and advice shopping is when you are seeking counsel, when you're seeking true counsel, that means you are going to people who you trust their voice, even if they tell you what you don't want to hear. And I just want to serve notice to some people. Don't be upset with people when they don't come to you and ask you certain things, because some people are seeking counsel and some people are what we call advice shopping. Now, advice shopping is when you are actually going from person to person and you are specifically picking out people to talk to who you know is going to tell you what you want to hear. Does anybody know anybody like that? Have you ever been in that type of situation where somebody come and they ask you something, but next you find out they're asking a whole bunch of other people as well, the very same thing, and you're sitting there and you're pondering within yourself. You're questioning yourself. Did I say something wrong? Did I not? Is something wrong with me? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Is something wrong with me? Because they didn't take your counsel. But again, I need for you to understand, some people are not seeking counsel. Some people are advice shopping, because watch this, they're looking for the person who is going to tell them what they want to hear. And that's where we find Rehoboam at. He is advice shopping. And he's asking the same question just to different people, because there is a specific answer that he is looking for. I'm trying to help somebody now, because you've been mad at people and you've been hard on yourself and you've been thinking that something is wrong with your counsel. There is nothing wrong with your counsel. You just ran into somebody who is advice shopping. And they're shopping for the person who is going to tell them what they really want to hear. And then when they find the person that tells them what they really want to hear, then that's when they really buy into it. And that's where we find Rehoboam at. He's advice shopping. And he went to the elders, and the elders told him, yes, you need to hearken into what the people are saying. You need to hearken into what the people are saying, because it's going to benefit you. And it's going to work for you. But that wasn't the advice that he really wanted. So he went to a younger group of people who thought like he did, who believed like he did. And they gave him the advice that they gave him. They basically told him, they said, look, these people are going to think that you are weak. If you relieve the pressure that your father put on them, they're going to think that you are weak. And so basically the advice that they were giving him was about how he looked and how it would make him look. Do you know that there are some people that only give you the advice that make you look and feel a certain way, but it will never lead to you be walking in your promise? So you got to be careful at the advice that you take from people, especially when you're advice shopping, because some people will tell you what you want to hear, but it will never be the thing that you need to hear that's going to help you walk in the promises of what God has said concerning you. Be careful at who is advising you. Be careful at who you tell your issues to. Be careful at who you ask questions to. Be careful. And he goes to this younger group who doesn't have any experience. And they tell him what he wants to hear. And I'm giving you a little bit of backstory before we get into the meat of it. And he goes to these people, and yet they tell him what he wants to hear. And then after they tell him what he wants to hear, he meets back with the people 3 days later. He meets back with Jehoram. He meets with them. He meets with them. And he tells them, he said, watch this now. Listen at the pride that he's talking in. He said, if you think my father was something, let me show you what I can do. Let me show you just how much of a king I can be. And he tells the people everything that they don't want to hear. But I just need for somebody to type it over in the chat section. It's still going to add up. Because some of us have gotten news that we didn't want to hear. And it made us doubt what God has said. But I came to tell you it's still going to add up. Some of us are dealing with situations that look the very opposite of what God has said, but it's still going to add up. As long as there is a God word on it, it's still going to add up. I don't care what the situation looks like. I don't care what it feels like. I don't care what they saying about it. I don't care what they add or what they take away. It's still going to add up. And they told him, he said, I'm going to be meaner to you. I'm just putting it in plain, simple terms. He said, I'm going to be meaner to you. I'm going to be harder on you than what my father was. He said, I'm going to do it worse than what my father did. Wait a minute. Can you imagine what, oh God, Jeroboam is dealing with? I got this promise from God that I'm going to have 10 out of the 12. But this man says that he's going to work us harder. Oh God, come on here. I need for somebody to catch that, because some of us has gotten a God word on something. And in the process, and in the time between God saying what he said, it's got harder. Can anybody relate to that? It's got harder. I've been feeling more pressure. But I got a God word, but I've been feeling more pressure. I got a God word, but it's been getting harder. I got a God word, but it's been getting tougher. I got a God word, but I've been getting more frustrated. I got a God word. I got a God word. I got a God word. And it seems like when I got that God word, it's gotten harder. It's gotten tougher. I've been more frustrated. I've been more ill. I've been more upset. I've just been on edge about everything. And Jeroboam, he had this word that God said, I'm going to give you 10 out of the 12. I'm going to give you 10 out of the 12. But then yet here comes this king that's saying, I'm going to make it harder for you. Is anybody dealing with some situations like that? You know you got a God word, but this situation is seeming like it's getting harder. It seems like it's getting tougher. It seems like it's just stressing me out more and frustrating me more. What do I do? And the king, he did not listen at verse 15. So the king did not listen to the people. But this is where I hope to empower the body of Christ. Because the scripture says, for the turn of events was from God. Oh, that should have made somebody happy right there. Did the events in your life, once you got the God word, did the events in your life take a turn in the opposite direction? Whew. Did the events in your life make it seem like it wasn't going to happen? Did the turn of events make you doubt what God has said? Did the turn of events frustrate you? Did the turn of events make you get your Kleenex box out and cry tears? Did the turn of events make you lose your appetite? You didn't even want to eat. Did the turn of events just leave you distraught? Because watch this. If the turn of events of the bad news got to you, I came to serve notice on you with good news on today. Because according to verse 15, it says, so the king did not listen to the people, for the turn of events was from God. I just need for somebody to type it over in the chat section. The turn of events was from God. The turn of events were from God. The thing that made me cry, the thing that made me look like God wasn't going to do what he said, it was from God. The things that brought tears to my eyes, the thing that kept me up at night, the thing that kept me in my prayer closet, the thing that kept me on my face, the thing that kept me writing and believing God, it was all turn of events that were from God. Watch this. But they were just not events from God. They were working to fulfill. I need for somebody to catch this. The turn of events, they were twofold. They were from God and they were coming so that the word of God might be made manifest in my life. Whew. You've been looking at your events all wrong. But according to this word on today, the turn of events, the things that's been turning in your life, the things that's been happening in your life, they were from God that the Lord might fulfill his word. It's still going to add up. Don't you spend another day crying about the turn of events that's happened in your life. Watch this. Because they had to happen that way. Because some of us thought that God's word could only happen if things were working in sync, oh God, with what he said. Because that makes us feel better when things are working in sync with what God has said. But what God is showing us through this text is he said, if my word is on it, my word can work whether it's in sync or out of sync. He said, because I'm God of my word, I can still make it add up. The things that turned in your favor, I can make them work. The things that did not turn in your favor, I can make them work. The things that made you happy, I can make them work. The things that made you cry, I can make them work. Because I can add them all up to equal out to what I said. You've been frustrated. You've been depressed. You've been down because it looked like they was not going to add up. But God said, all I'm doing is trying to show you the real power of my word. Whether it's in sync or out of sync, my word still stands true. I'm going to make it add up. I'm going to make it add up. I want you to look at everything that you've been dealing with, everything that's been frustrating you, everything that's made you cry, everything that's made you doubt. And I dare somebody to decree it and declare it. You still going to add up. Orabahaya. You still going to add up to what God said you was going to be. The heartache is going to add up. The disappointment is going to add up. The things that I had to let go of, it's going to still add up. The things that kept me up at night, the things that made me think I was losing my mind, the things that made me feel like I was by myself and God had left me out here on an island all by myself, it's going to still add up. The things I had to walk away from, Aretta, it's still going to add up. Korabahaya. LaShawn, the things that broke my heart, it's still going to add up. The things that left me crying, feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest, it's still going to add up. Come on, Tiff. Even my isolation is going to add up. Feeling like I'm by myself, it's still going to add up. It's still going to add up. I'm going to say it with confidence, Tanya. It's still going to add up. Watch this. Even the things that I can't see, they fuzzy. Come on. They fuzzy. I don't even see how this going to happen, but it's going to add up. You might be like, well, Pastor Friend, how he going to make it add up? By his word? I can't give you no other thing but by his word. I don't care because there's no specifics in it. Because whatever he has to add, he gonna add. Whatever he has to take away, he has to take away. Whatever he has to multiply, he gonna multiply. Whatever he has to divide, he gonna divide. But all I know is still gonna add up to equal what he said. It's still gonna add up. He factored in my tears. I need for somebody to understand this, Bridget, because watch this. It's still going to add up. He factored in the heartache. Every time I say something, I just need for somebody to type in. It's still going to add up. Copy and paste it if you have to and just keep hitting enter. And I need for those of you who can't type that fast, I just need for you to decree it out of your mouth because I'm going to come down your road at some point. The heartache is still going to add up. The disappointment is still going to add up. Watch this, the health challenges is still going to add up. The disappointment is still going to add up. Having to give the job up is still going to add up. Having to give that person up that I really adored, it's still going to add up. It's still going to add up. It's still going to add up. I need for y'all to understand that this is what's happening now. I just see a calculator and it's just adding up. It's just adding up. It's just adding up. And the equal part of it is going to be the sum of what God has said. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it feels like. I don't care what it sounds like. It's still going to add up to be exactly what he said. I cried about it, but it's still going to add up. I was frustrated about it, but it's still going to add up. My heart was broken over the thing, but it's still going to add up. I didn't feel like eating, sleeping, or getting up. Come on here. Did y'all just catch that? I didn't feel like eating, sleeping, and or getting up. But all I know is still going to add up. The frustration, the disappointment, the loneliness, the isolation, heartache, pain, the financial troubles. All I know is still going to add up. It's going to add up. And Jeroboam, he took God at his word. And you can keep reading on in the text. You can keep reading on in the text. And they tried to do some things. And they tried to, watch this, they even tried to make it harder for the people. But I want y'all to know that the word that God gave Jeroboam in 2 Kings 11, verses 26 through 40. Because we've been decreeing and declaring that it's going to add up. But I need for y'all to watch the shift in this. Because you're decreeing it, oh God, from a place of faith. You're decreeing it even though you don't see it. That's what you're doing right now when you say it's going to add up. But you remember last Sunday, what was the thing that we said God going to do? Does anybody remember? Just type the word over in the chat section at what we said God was going to do last week. What he'd been showing us and telling us that he was going to do, because we've been decreeing and declaring it from this position of faith, is still going to add up with tears running down my face sometimes, feeling frustrated. I don't really see it, but because I believe what God has said, I'm decreeing and declaring that it's still going to add up. And because of that faith, we said last week it's going to flip. We said it's going to flip. Does anybody remember that from last week? We said it's going to flip. It's going to flip. We said it's going to flip just like a pancake. It's going to flip. Y'all remember that? It's going to flip. There you go, Aretta. We've been watching it flip. Watch this. Because the very word that God gave Jeroboam in 2 Kings 11, verses 26 through 40. It came to pass. Oh God, I need for somebody to catch that. Through the hardship, I've been telling you it's going to add up. But now I'm telling you it's going to come to pass. Oh God, I've been telling you that God was going. This is somebody's prophetic word. I've been telling you that God was going to do it for me. I've been telling you that God was going to make a way. I've been telling you. But now let me tell you the other side. When this thing flipped, it came to pass. Come on here. That needs to be somebody's testimony. It came to pass. It came to pass, just like he said. He added it all up and it came to pass. He made everything that was wrong right. It came to pass. All the things that I've been telling you, it came to pass. All the things that I've been decreeing and declaring, it came to pass. Not it's going to come to pass. I need for somebody to catch what we're saying in the spirit through faith. It came to pass. That means he's already done it. It came to pass. It came to pass. And as we keep reading in the text and we go into the next chapter, God did exactly what he said. I don't care what's been working against you. I don't care what's been frustrating you. I don't care what's been making you cry. I don't care what's been keeping you up at night. The word of the Lord comes to you on today. It's going to add up and all come to pass. Whatever he said. I don't care how hard things have gotten in the place that you are. It's going to add up and going to come to pass. I don't care who said it. I don't care what somebody tries to do to make it harder for you, Aretta. It's going to all add up and come to pass. As long as you stay in the will of God, it's going to all add up and come to pass. I don't care how tough it may seem, Bam 11. It's going to all add up and come to pass. I don't care what it looks like, Corey. It's going to all add up and come to pass as you stay in the will of God, as you hearken unto the voice of God, as you obey what God is telling you to do. T, it's going to come to pass. It's going to all add up, LaShawn, and come to pass. That's my declaration this week. It's going to all add up and come to pass. Oh, God. But I just got this notice. It's going to all add up and come to pass. I just got this phone call. It's going to all add up and come to pass. They said this about me, but it's going to all add up and come to pass. They trying to frustrate me, but it's going to all add up and come to pass. They come in my office with an attitude, Bridget, but it's going to all add up and come to pass. It's going to all add up and come to pass. You need to type that on your phone this week. It's going to all add up and come to pass. Put that in your calendar to ring every day. It's going to all add up and come to pass. They frustrated me on the job this week, Maddie, but it's going to all add up and come to pass. They don't like me, Tiff, but it's going to all add up and come to pass. It's going to be exactly what God said it's going to be. Even with my Kleenex boxes, T, I've had to cry about this thing. I've had to wrestle with this thing. I've toiled over this thing, but it's going to all add up and come to pass.